Hey guys, here's Heiko. Another quick little Airhead related tech tip. So let's say you just did some repairs, maybe you did a valve adjustment, put a new gasket in here, and you push your bike out of the garage for the first time, start it up, and the first thing that you notice is an oil leak. Maybe this bike is new to you, you don't know why it's doing that, maybe that's all brand new to you, and so this bike here is new to me. It's not mine. It's a friend's motorcycle that I'm fixing up. I just did a valve adjustment, removed two valve cover gaskets, which should have been a red flag for me. That's usually something that people do to eliminate oil leaks if either the cylinder head is warped, not straight anymore, or the valve cover is warped and not straight anymore. So then they just put two gaskets with a little bit of some RTV silicone in between, kind of sandwiched in between the two gaskets on there to have more squish factor to make up for a surface that's not straight. So to be really sure what we're going to do, I'm going to take the valve covers off again. So you have two 10 millimeter wrench size nuts here and a 14 millimeter here. We will take this off, take the new gasket that I just installed off, and then I'm going to show you how to check whether or not your valve cover or your cylinder head is warped, because that's kind of important. Cylinder head warped, that means you would have to remove the cylinder head, bring it to a machine shop. They put that on a lathe and then they fly cut it so it's straight again, or you have to straighten out the valve cover by machining it, or just buy a new one. Sometimes if it's not too bad, you can get away with the two gasket method, or you can buy silicone gaskets. I just want to know for sure which part is the problem here, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to do that. So let me take the valve covers off, and then we're going to figure this out. There should always be a flat washer and a wave washer under each. Flat washer going onto the aluminum, and then a wave washer between the nut and the flat washer. The wave washer gets tension to it to keep it from being loose. So now, use the wheel loose. Right in the basket and see it. It might be worse. Something is worse. So we're going to go. Maybe if you want to do the cushion with a screwdriver, make sure you don't break off it. That will be kind of down. That's something that's super straight here. The holes in the cylinder head, and the stuff's coming out of the valve cover and not lining up like 100%. So I'm hoping that it's just the valve cover that's warped. Okay, and we can fix that. Okay, here we go. So here's valve cover. I always tack the gasket to the valve cover with a little bit of Hulomar, which is a really old-fashioned sealant, but in that way the gasket stays with the valve cover and you don't drop it in the dirt when you're out on the street, and it also doesn't get ripped when you're pulling it off. So I leave one side completely clean and the other side I tack to the valve cover. So of course we have all the valve the rockers and the rocker shafts in the way, so we can't really put a straight edge on it, but we can remove the stud here in the middle, and then at least go from this corner to that and from that corner to that, and kind of figure out if the heads are bulging, the middle section can bulge out, or if it's the valve cover. But we're going to start with the valve cover. So I'm going to get the gasket off. The Hulomar does not solidify, so it stays sticky, and you will be able to remove the gasket even with this sealant on it. It's just, you know, it's just a trick to keep it in place. So, all right, let's go over to the workbench. So I try to give you the perfect vantage point. Valve cover here. This is just a steel ruler. It's probably not perfect, but it's good enough. I use the the two studs here to actually lean it against so it's standing up on its edge. And then I just look if I have a light behind this hole here, and I'm just looking if there's any light coming through here in the middle, and it looks like this valve cover is actually pretty straight, so that leads me to believe now it's maybe a little hump in the middle. I can rock it a little bit, at least. There's a little bit of some rocking going on. I don't know if this is enough to make this leak like it did. We're gonna check now on the cylinder head side. So now on the cylinder head side, I was going to take the bolt out, but I think we don't need to do that. I just put my ruler on here in the middle, like in this little diagonal angle, and I can rock it pretty heavily. And then I did it the other direction like this. So this cylinder head is definitely the cause of this leak. The valve cover, it might have a little bit of a hump in the middle, but I would say that maybe the two bolts, they actually pull this in a little bit, so that shouldn't be a problem. But the cylinder head here has a much bigger hump just over this short distance. So if I would be able to put a straight edge on here without the valves in the way, without the rockers in the way, I could probably rock this way further. So the problem now is, to fix this, I would have to remove the cylinder head, which is not a big deal in itself. Requires new gaskets, of course, and then machining it, and that's going to be the expensive part. And you have to disassemble the entire head to do that. So take the valves out and all that. And then you have to find a machine shop that's actually willing to do it. And then they probably want to flatten out the gasket side as well, to make sure, you know, because if it's warped in one direction, it's probably warped everywhere. Since this motor really doesn't have any other issues other than the oil leak, it has good compression, it starts easy, it runs fine. I haven't even done a timing adjustment or a carb synchronization, because the first engine start, I even immediately had a leak, oil coming out and spilling onto my driveway, which I didn't like. So there's nothing else wrong other than this oil leak. So what I'm going to do is I will either fix this problem with a stack of two gaskets. There were two gaskets installed here, or you can buy silicone gaskets for those Airheads. It's kind of hit and miss if they will work, because if you have any kind of smear of oil here, they like to slip out. Some people sandwich them in between stock gaskets, so they use a stock gasket, a silicone gasket, and another stock gasket, and then sandwich them in here. The studs are usually long enough to do that kind of stuff, and that will, you know, kind of eliminate the silicone gasket slipping out, and it gives it enough squishiness to actually push this together so you don't have a leak. We'll see what I'm going to do, but I will definitely try to fix this somehow. All right, guys, so it's a few days later. I have since ordered some silicone valve cover gaskets for this R65. Oh yeah. So I bought those puppies here from Ted Porter's Beemer shop. And I bought a bunch of them because, you know, I have two other Airheads. They all eventually develop a little bit of that same warpage issue, some more than others, some years more than others. But these here I came across, and they are actually gray in color, so you don't see like a red silicone gasket in between your valve cover and your cylinder head. So it's a little nicer, and I wanted to try them out anyways. This is not my motorcycle, so this is eventually going to go away, and I want to try those out on my bikes as well. Supposedly you can reuse them over and over and over again. Of course, there's going to be a limitation to that, but on this bike we're going to try this out and see what happens. But before we do that, since I had done a valve adjustment and then ran the bike a little bit for a few minutes until we noticed the oil dripping out of the cylinder, not the cylinder head, but out of the valve cover, then I shut it down and didn't even continue on with timing adjustment and carb synchronization and all that stuff. But since it has gotten warm a little bit, I want to see if my valve adjustment has changed in any shape or form. So I want to do it again. Here, let me move you back a little bit, back away. And I've done a valve adjustment video before. Had a little bit of a mixed reception because some people didn't like the methods how I adjust the axial play here on the rocker shafts. We're not going to do that. I'm not going to retorque anything here cylinder head wise. I already did that. I just want to check if my valve adjustment is still good or if anything has settled. You know, since we are still in here, we might. Okay. And then one last check. Yeah, so we have 0.1, 0.2. Yeah, that feels good. Now we want to clean off the seal surface on both sides on the valve cover. Remember that if you have those squarish looking ones, not the peanut type, there is a right and a left to it. There's the R mark for right. It doesn't matter if you put it down or up. The symmetry of this design here is the same up or down. You cannot put the right side. You can put the right side on the left side. It's just gonna look funny. Here in this case, you want these lines to line up with your header pipe, so to speak. If you put the right side over on the left side of the motor, it's just gonna look funky. If you want to drive people nuts at like a tech day or like a motorcycle meet or whatever, you put it on intentionally wrong so that 27 people are going to point it out to you. But yeah, you want to put the right cover on the right side of the engine, of course. So now we're just going to give it a quick little cleanup. I had the bike sitting like this open with some oil catch cans down below for a day so that, you know, the residual oil from the valve train can drip off. That makes it a little easier than on the cleaning process. Just make sure you don't get any, you know, debris in there while you leave it open. Just put a rag over it. I made sure that the studs are all the way in on both sides. They are not torqued to anything. They're just screwed in. You want to have as much thread interference or a thread inside the cylinder head as you can, because, you know, after all, it's some cast aluminum alloy, and you don't want to accidentally rip this out. And then you have to do a thread repair and all that other stuff. I have retorqued all the cylinder head studs to spec, which you will find in your owner's manual, not in your owner's manual, maybe in your owner's manual, in your repair manual, or on Snowbump's webpage. I'll put a Snowbump webpage link down below. So you want to get as much oily smear off of here so that the silicone gasket doesn't slide around. Apparently that is an issue, so I'm using these for the very first time as well. I've always used paper gasket. And then of course you want to do the same on the valve cover as well. Clean it up, make sure you don't have any dirt in here or insects moving in. These studs I also made sure they are cleaned up. I actually ran a dye over it just to make sure there's no gunk in the threads. That always makes it a little easier to put the nuts and washers on and tighten everything up. So, and then I guess I need to cut my pack open here. Here's a snip, and another snip. In German, Seitenschneider, if you ever wondered. So of course we're only going to use one of those. We're gonna, I was debating whether or not I want to do my normal Hülomar trick that I always stick my gasket down with Hülomar to the valve cover. But since this is silicone and I'm using them for the very first time, I just want to see how they are a little deformed. But I think since they're held in place in 3 spots right here and in the center, I think we're going to be just fine. And I'm going to put the R to the top. So, like that. And we're going to try to shove it all together. Hello. What's the story? Why does my valve cover not want to? Oh, there was a washer in the way, apparently, that was stuck to the cylinder head. My goodness. It doesn't want to go on very well. That is also part of the warpage situation, that the holes where the studs that are inside your valve cover need to go through, that's maybe has shrunken together a little bit. We're just going to give it a tappity tap tap. Tappy tap tap. Tap tap tap. And then of course you need to make sure you look around this thing and see if your gasket is actually where it needs to be. And that looks pretty good. I mean, they haven't slipped out of the way yet. They say that you need to assemble it relatively dry. Then you want to have a flat washer and a wave washer behind each nut. This one, and that one. And as you just saw, there were some washers springing off the backside of the cylinder head, even though I already took 2 washers off. So some people, they just keep stacking washers on there. So I grabbed a new set of wave washers. These wave washers, they like to flatten out over time, so you can't really reuse them all that often. I just use stainless steel. And then after you've used the wave washer once or twice, I just replace them. So now we're going to put the center one on here. That's a 14. If we had a socket here. So, and the to snug that in a little bit, that will push the gasket on. Oh, wrong way. In the center is where the bulge is in the cylinder head. This is where most of the compression needs to happen. So, and then another flat washer and a wave washer on the little studs here on the side. Fresh wave washer. Cannot really do that very well with gloves on. I always try to work with gloves to, you know, protect skin from oil, hydrocarbons and such, and cleaners and whatnots. But I always have a hard time doing this fiddly stuff with gloves on. All right, we got that on. Now we're going to do the same on the other side with a fresh wave washer. For the newer vehicles, motorcycles, it's 22 to 26 Newton meters. How about we try 20? 14, here's 20. Let's do 20. Here's 20. And the smaller ones here with a 10 millimeter wrench, we're just going to do by feel. Just remember those studs, they go into relatively soft aluminum, so you definitely don't want to overdo it. So that's one side covered up with a silicone gasket, and let me see if I can move you over there to show you the gray color. Blends in pretty well, I gotta say. So there's the gasket. And now I'm going to do that on the other side. One last valve adjustment check. Put new valve cover gasket on. And then we're back where I started off. I wanted to do timing and carburetor adjustment, synchronization, since I put new throttle cables in and cleaned the whole carb. We got to do that. This one here, by the way, is the R65 that has the electronic bean can. This can here is pretty much your ignition trigger. The older ones have actually a set of points in it. This one has a Hall effect sensor in it. How you can tell that is if you look at the can, it doesn't have a condenser on the outside and just one little cable going up here. And then under the tank, up there under the tank is actually the electronic ignition module. So this is the advanced electronic Hall effect sensor pickup. I don't know how reliable this is. I haven't dealt with the more modern Airheads that much, but the adjustment is pretty simple. So you get your timing light out, you warm up your engine, ride it around the neighborhood, warm it up, and then you have two socket head bolts, one there and one on the other side. You can slightly loosen those up, not loose, but like that with a little bit of friction you can turn the bean can here. But I first would check if maybe the timing is correct, because these don't tend to change timing all that much. You don't have to adjust points, you don't have to adjust the dwell, you don't have to do anything. As long as the timing is correct, you just leave it alone. And then you also want to check if at maximum advance, which is reached by about 3,500 RPM, if you actually see the Z mark in the timing window. If that's all the case, then you don't even need to mess with it. Just leave it alone. If it's working, you know, never touch a running system. So let me do the other side. Let me get it outside. Let me get it warmed up. Let me get the fans out. And then we're going to do some timing checking and carb adjustment, because my first run that I did, it wasn't super happy. All right, guys. So I got all the valve covers back on. I've been running the bike a little bit to warm it up. It's not running great yet, but we did the valve adjustment. I have silicone gaskets on there and it's not leaking, at least not currently, so thumbs up on those. Now I want to do is a timing check or adjustment if necessary. For that I have an external 12 volt power supply here, this battery pack. That's what I hook my timing light onto, so I don't have to fiddle around with those tiny little battery terminals on the bike. This is my timing light. Turn that on. And I have the inductive clamp not here on the left side but on the right side. And now we can see in the timing window what the timing is doing. And I see the S mark. So the timing, at least at idle, is perfect. Unfortunately, she isn't really happy spinning up to 3,500 RPM. It's backfiring, so there's definitely something going on with the fuel supply here. which we will have to figure out. But the static timing, that's close enough. And my color filling of the letters definitely helps to see it. So we can turn that off and literally put this away for now. So we have at least a decent static timing. Then you can also see down here I have my harmonizer, which is a carb synchronization tool hooked up to one carburetor in gauge mode, which shows me the vacuum at that vacuum port right now. And in gauge mode you can try to get the best idle mixture by looking at the amount of vacuum the engine is producing on this side, and you want to adjust it to the highest value. Down here is the idle mixture screw, flathead screwdriver, and you can just mess around and look at the inches of mercury so that you get the highest reading. Make small adjustments. When it starts dropping off, go into the other direction. So we were already pretty close. I guess that's pretty close. Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty good. So the vacuum port has a little screw and a gasket. Now we're taking this off here. Ooh, don't want to put it in here accidentally. Put that back on this vacuum port for now and do the other side. So this is just idle mixture adjustment with a vacuum gauge. If I can get it on there. If I can. As you can see, I have two fans running, so we're not overheating the engine accidentally here. Oh my goodness. Again, working with gloves is just a pleasure. Okay, tighten up. Now we're going to do the same on the other side. I'll do that off camera, and then I'm going to come back and do the balancer mode, balancing it at idle, and then we're going to balance it at RPM to adjust the slack of the throttle cables. So now I adjusted the gauge mode on the right side cylinder also to highest reading. Now we're going to change this to balancer mode. You just hold the button, balancer mode. Then you can also give it a short push. No, hold on. Calibrating it so it sets itself to 0. So that's how we start out. And then we're going to grab the second vacuum line. Now we just have to put one on each side. I'll put it right here on the seat. Of course I need to take the screw out again. The right side I still have the screw off. There's a little screw. Put them somewhere where you don't lose them. Put the vacuum line on the port. So now I have both vacuum lines attached, and we're pretty far off, so this cylinder is producing more vacuum than the other one over there. So we can either, so this side more vacuum, that's why the bar moves over to this side. We can now either slow down the other one at the idle adjuster, the idle speed adjuster here, or we're opening this more, so we're gonna screw it in clockwise until that brings up the idle too. So we're at 950 RPM, now 1000. So now I'm gonna go over and close that one off a little bit. Go counterclockwise. It's a little fast for my taste. I want it in the 850 to 900 range. So I'm closing this one counterclockwise. So we're a little under 900 RPMs now, 870, and we have the bar more or less pretty much in the middle. Now we want to do woohoo! All it took from not wanting to idle, here, let me get you a little closer. All it took from not wanting to idle or not wanting to rev up to a perfect balanced carb, 830, 840, 850, something like that. I like that. Sounds good. Runs really smoothly. Put a glass of water on the tank, and if it shakes the water out of the cup, you definitely are not balanced. Yeah, then I do gauge mode, like I said, to do the idle mixture. You just want to bring it to the highest value vacuum reading on one carburetor, then on the other, and then you go to balance mode, you balance it out. So let me see if I can put it here in a way that you can see the numbers. So there, and we're zooming in a little bit for you. Can you guys read that? Yes. So we're at idle, perfectly balanced, 850 RPM. And now I'm grabbing the throttle, and I'm gonna bring it up to about 3000 RPM and hold it there, and want to see, as I open the throttle, we're already coming off of balance. Not too terrible. So the left side cylinder is creating more vacuum. That means that the throttle butterfly on this side, on the left side, isn't opening as far as the other one. And the only thing you need to do now, let me grab a 10mm wrench real quick. So what you need to do now is the throttle cables, when I put them in, I install them with a little bit of slack. When you wiggle on the sheath of the throttle cable, there is some play. Now I undo the little lock nut here on the throttle cable, take it loose, and then just unscrew the adjuster like a tiny little bit. And then we're going to do the test again. It's still making more vacuum here on this side, so I unscrew the adjuster a little bit more. Tiny little teensy little bit more. This is almost as close as we can get it. And this is how we're gonna leave it. So now you just need to hold the adjuster, tighten up the little 10mm nut without changing the adjustment. And then we're good. Then we have the timing checked, at least at static at idle. We have the max vacuum at idle for mixture adjustment. I'll just check on the other side if the cables are tight. And then it's always a good idea, once you tighten everything up, to look at it one more time. So at idle, we're so close to the center. And the RPM really doesn't change that. So that's good. Now we can do one last thing. Let me move you back a little bit. See, my timing hole is still open. I still have my timing light here. Just need to hook it up to the spark plug again. This is the inductive clamp. I'm going to put it on the right side. Like that. Turn my power supply on. You can see it flashing. We're still pretty good. For whatever reason, the timing light stops flashing when I go up in RPM. Why is the question? Before my harmonizer falls off here. Stay there. For whatever reason, my timing light doesn't like the ignition on this bike. It's not picking it up solidly enough. So I'm going to get my old one out, which is like a more basic version, and see if that works. Let me pause you. So now I have my really old one, bought in Germany at some point in my life, probably 30 years ago. We'll see if that likes the RPM a little better. Perfect, yeah, this works better. I guess the other one, I don't know. It's a much more expensive, way more capable timing light, but it doesn't pick up the pulse from the cable as well. Maybe I dropped the inductive clamp a few too many times. So now we have timing, carburetors, everything adjusted. Now it's the time that I need to disconnect the battery one more time and put the engine cover on and take it for some good riding and see, you know, shakedown run, maybe retest everything afterwards. So the UPS man just brought another delivery from Max BMW. We're really so close to getting this bike all the way done. I really want to give it a good shakedown run, and then I'm going to run around with a wrench around this. I really like that Max BMW. They always sent me a pack of candy. By the way, Ted Porter at the Beemer shop does the same. At least a couple hard candy, you know, M&Ms in a bag for a $20 order. That's pretty good. They used to have free shipping on every order. Unfortunately, they have changed that now. Now it's $90 or $99 free shipping. These are just some rubber bumpers for the seat, the underside of the seat. So we have the timing dialed in, or we really had no reason to change it. We have the carbs. Idle mixture is good. Idle balancing is good. RPM 3000 RPM balancing is also good, so the cables are adjusted. I tighten up all the adjusters. Now we take all this stuff off here because we don't need it anymore, at least for the time being. Turn my balancer off here, my harmonizer. I'm so sad that they don't make it anymore. There was a guy, an avid Airhead enthusiast who developed this thing, and then he passed away. and then the company that also makes the cat dash bought the rights for it and all the remaining parts, and they managed to still assemble a few and sold them all off, but now it's completely out of production. If I would be a little bit more into electronics, I would try to work together with the company Cat Dash and try to re-engineer this thing, or reverse engineer, and then bring it back to market, because it's really good. It's a good product. It works, it's easy. So now, seat bumpers under here. This one was missing, and here's one missing, and you know, I couldn't leave it like that. And then Max BMW, they're pretty quick in shipping. That's one here. This is a $10 rubber piece. $10, crazy. And then here is one of those. It just slides over the bolt there. It's adjustable. The bolt is adjustable, so you can adjust the bumper pretty much. But this one here was completely missing. Of course, now it doesn't want to go over. Go on there. Maybe I need to get some lubrication. My favorite lubricant, Ballistol. Doesn't deteriorate rubber, it's not flammable, it's not toxic. It's good for almost anything. You can put it on your hands for lubrication, really. Okay, go on there. Little rubber bumper. No, that one needs to be adjusted. Maybe that's the reason why it was missing. There you go. So now we have all the support to sit on this bike. Oh yeah. All the other ones are still there. Not going to do anything to those. Perfect. So, as I mentioned before, when you put the front cover on or take it off, you gotta disconnect the ground on your battery, or else you might ground out something on the diode board up there. The diode board is the rectifier, so to speak, that turns AC voltage into DC. If you touch any of the connectors there, you might ground that out and then burn up your electrical system. So disconnect the ground on your battery and you're good to go. So we're going to do that, and then I'm going to go ride. Most people take the ground off here on the engine case because it's easier to get to. This is also the transmission breather, so to speak, because the bolt has a hole in it. But if you strip this out, you are in a you have a big problem. In most cases, you can also manage to get the ground right off of the battery, which I usually do. This one here is kind of in the way, but even with my rubber gloves on, I can take this little 10mm bolt out, no problem. There's a washer that I'm about to drop. There we go. And then just get the ground out of the way. So now we have no electrical connection to anything. So now I can put the front cover back on. So on this newer R6, I say newer, 84, my R90 is a 74. The engine front cover actually only has 2 bolts holding it on. And then down here is a pin that the cover slides on. Make sure you get the dirt out of this cover when you have it in your hand. Then you gotta put it on this dowel down here, and then it's just 2 socket heads bolts with a washer. And then you tighten it up. And Bob is your uncle. Again, it's all going into aluminum, so don't do 190-pound gorilla. Click. And click. So cover on, looks good, relatively clean. And now I guess it's time for a shakedown run, huh? First here in my neighborhood. I live in a very quiet neighborhood that only has one road going in. It's more or less kind of like a cul-de-sac neighborhood. I still need to put the little vacuum port plugs on. Let's not forget this, because that's a huge vacuum leak and that screws up your mixture. Doing things by feel and not by sight. Flathead screwdriver. And also, don't tighten that up too much. It's a little brass tube coming out that's threaded. And the other side. Now we just need to put the battery cable back on so we have juice to start the bike. The bike back on the road. Ignition. Contact. Oh yeah! Beautiful. Brakes work. Start. Fresh gear oil ships pretty well, brakes work, rear brakes work too. I might adjust them now a little tighter so they come in earlier. Engine runs pretty good. Yeah, gotta say, very steady, very smooth. And going in neutral, my neutral light works. I changed the neutral safety switch. My turn signals all say the right thing. Yeah. The brake lights work. The headlight and the high beam light here in the dash works as well. So pretty good. That's pretty much it. Woo. So it looks like this project is now finally coming to an end. Now I'm gonna, like I said, run around and just put a wrench on everything, making sure that I didn't forget anything. That's the most important. If you work on someone else's motorcycle, maybe you cannot make it run right, maybe you have to admit defeat, but you gotta make sure that all the safety things, bolts, nuts, tighten down so nothing falls off, brakes work properly. When your brakes, the rear brakes, come on a little too late for your taste, there is an adjuster. I think I filmed that the other day, how to adjust that. So right down here there's a little wing nut, so if it comes on too late and you want it to come on earlier, you just turn it in a turn or two. That's all. So how this gets adjusted is usually you put it on the center stand, make sure the rear wheel is free and spins, and you tighten it up until the shoe starts dragging, and then you undo it like 2 to 3 turns, and then you test ride it and then see what's going on. I think I'm gonna give her another bath. Side covers still need to go on. And then with the owner I have to readjust the handlebar position because I took it off and unfortunately didn't put a mark with a Sharpie on it, so it's probably not the correct angle, but everything else is good. I even did a couple modifications with a welder here. Let me show you. So the side kickstand here, the little aftermarket one, was always hitting the muffler. That's why there's a rubbing spot. And the stop is just a steel pin, and I welded a couple blobs on there to make it longer so it doesn't impact the muffler anymore. So no leaking so far. A little moisture here, I don't know. Once it's cooled down, I might tighten up the bolts here on the valve covers one more time. You know, the 20 Newton meters there in the middle, and then with by hand the smaller ones. But I think I'm pretty happy with this. It starts up really nicely, runs and idles really well. Oh. Only thing that I now have to test is the heated grips. There are heated grips on this bike, and I pretty much replaced the entire wiring for it. So the light turns on, but I haven't felt the heat yet, so I guess we will have to try that. Those heating elements, they can also burn out, be broken, not working anymore. Yeah. So far I don't feel anything. You know what, guys, I'm just gonna ride in the neighborhood a little bit. Sorry about that. You guys take care. One last thing that I want to check and show you guys. So if you do your steering head bearings, here in this case I only re-greased them, I didn't replace them. They were fine, the inner and outer race, and not the inner race, the outer races, they look good. They were still greased, so I just cleaned them up, re-greased them top and bottom. And then this particular one here doesn't have the old adjuster nut where you need a kind of a hook wrench. This one here is just a big one that's knurled on the outside. That's an adjuster by hand. You can grab your forks when it sits like this and the wheel is in the air. You can wiggle it front and back, and you don't want to feel any wiggle or like play. And then also the resistance going to left or right should be about the same. You don't want it too loose, you don't want it too tight. These are tapered roller bearings, so they want some preload. They definitely need some preload, or else they're gonna work themselves to death and bounce themselves to death. So you definitely want to grab this adjuster nut up here. Let me show you. Here's the adjuster, knurled adjuster nut, this one here. So you have to take this bolt loose. That's a Allen key that you need for that. And then this gets tightened down by hand. So you definitely want to put a pretty good load on the bearing. And then you ride it so the grease gets squeezed out and all that. And then you want to check it one more time. All right. And that's really it. I really like it. I'm going to be riding this just a little bit a trip after I check all the bolts one more time. And then I will give it back to my friend, and then I can finally start working on my own bikes again and start riding. Today is really the first day with decent weather. It's unbelievable. So sun is shining. Very nice.